5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
New year, new races, and we're back with another Norwood Cycling Club Summer Criterium. I've had a couple of weeks off work, and so I've spent a lot of time on the bike, and my legs were feeling absolutely cooked today. And I hadn't done a warm-up, so I decided to warm up by starting on the front for the first lap. There was a bit of a wind today. It was a headwind down the finish, which meant that the back straight got up to a pretty quick speed. And that ended up making the difference, because coming into the northern corner on this really rewards knowing the course and being able to hit that corner a bit quicker. But with the wind as it was, I was pretty confident that a breakaway would go, and I was just hoping that I'd be able to have the legs to go with it when it did. After getting the race started, I thought about pulling off the front, but then I saw the photographer. Pulled a bit of an extra turn just so that I could be seen being on the front for at least some of the photos of the race. I think I said, was I showing off for the photographer? Yes, I was. So after some first lap theatrics, I let myself drift around to the back, which was actually a bit harder than it should have been, because we were going so slowly at this point. I'm only at 150 beats a minute. We've actually had a bit of a tangle with D-Grade, who caught us up. Going into this corner, you can really see who knows the course well and who's not confident going through the corner. We were hitting it at 50k an hour, but the people on the brakes up ahead were just slowing it right down, and then punching out of it so hard. And of course, this is always the problem with being at the back of the pack. There's that concertina effect, and I had to do 700 or 800 watts just to get back on the wheel. And again, this was coming up into the windy section, so not being on a wheel here was pretty significant. And of course, as soon as you do catch up, everyone slows right down, so I could have just cruised up at 300 watts, 200 watts, and I would have been back on. A few laps later, once again, I'm at the very back of the group, just about bar one, and then this time I don't hit the brakes when they do, but instead come up on the inside, and you can see there's a few people really laying off. And you can take the corner way faster than this. I mean, we're only doing 40k an hour. You can take this at 50 or 60, or as Sam Welsford has shown, at 70. But this was a bit of a theme of this race, was that the easy option was to lay off coming into that corner, and you could just roll up the back of the peloton and come out of the corner with a lot more speed. And it's probably the only real example of a hometown advantage. A few laps later, same thing. Instead of hitting the brakes, I just kind of roll up the back. Even so, a gap opens up ahead of me as we go through this corner. I think it might be this guy in the Norwood red doesn't quite get on the wheel because he has to go around the 028 here. I'm about to get into the line and start trying to pull. This guy on the left really doesn't want to let me in, and I'm okay with that. Someone else is going to close this gap, so I'm just going to slot in behind him. Frank lets me in, and sure enough, as soon as we get back on, the pace comes out of the main bunch up ahead. So the pace has come out, and as we're about to lap D-Grade again, I can see a couple of guys going off the front, just in ones and twos. And so I decide to move up a little bit closer to the front, just in case there's a bit of a move that goes. And I see Nick Underwood jumping across to that, and Nick's the sort of guy that you really want with you in a breakaway. He will work hard. He's a lot stronger than me. And so if he's going up the road, that's a really good opportunity for me to give it a go. And I see this girl going across the road and decide to try to hop on her. We get a bit of separation. And we sort of sprint past D-Grade. Unfortunately, as I catch up to this woman here, she blows up. I think I yell at her to get on the wheel, but I'm not sure if she makes it across. In any event, I'm committed, and I decide that I am going to do everything I can to get onto the back of Nick and this other rider who's also gone up the road. I don't recognise her. I've looked up her name afterwards. It's Elizabeth Crow. But I assumed that she was going to be able to pull through. I mean, you don't get into a breakaway without being pretty damn strong. And sure enough, she's sticking pretty close to Nick Underwood. And I can see we're getting closer and closer to the two guys up front, and I'm thinking this is perfect. We've got a nice break of 5. I've now had 5 seconds to sit on. If these guys can close it up, I'll pull through to the front and start putting on some watts. Unfortunately, Nick blows up just before he gets all the way across. She doesn't pull through. And then I've got to burn a match to try to close that last 10 metres myself. And that little moment of hesitation allowed a few more people to get across, and that kind of put paid to the attack. I thought when I saw a couple of unfamiliar faces behind me that the whole peloton was there. Turns out, looking at the camera now, it was only sort of 5 or 6 guys. The guy off the front pulls off dramatically. I'm pretty sure that's Sean O'Callaghan. And I decide that this isn't going anywhere, and I pull out the parachute myself. So a bit of a wasted effort. The legs didn't like me. I'm up at 187 beats a minute, but I thought it was worth a shot. Just a few moments later, this guy from Norwood just kind of rolls off the front. I've got absolutely nothing left to chase it, and so I'm just kind of hoping that the Peloton, closes it down quickly, sweeps on by. But people were just sitting on my wheel. I couldn't get off the front fast enough, and a few people started jumping away, and a big gap opened up. And at this point, with people still sitting on my wheel and I'm doing 200 watts, this really could have been a breakaway that made it. I had nothing left to chase, so I was really hoping that enough people would just sort of jump across that eventually the Peloton would get interested and make it itself. And you can see the group coming together up ahead. I think you can see Canane coming past me, rolling absolutely 0 watts. And that looks like it's a pretty good break. I reckon there were 6 or 7 people in it. Some pretty strong rollers were in there. Frank was up there. He's always strong. And we're coming around this bottom corner on the map, 5, 6, 7 wide. And there is just no urgency to chase that thing down. Fortunately for me, the Peloton got its act together, or the brake sort of disintegrated, and it all came back together. And for whatever reason, we had about 30 seconds here where the pace just came out of this bunch, and it turned into a pretty cruisy Sunday ride. I say for a few seconds, because just a little bit later, you can see 3 or 4 people attacking off the front again. And of course, this is the move. The pace has come out of the bunch. Obviously, there's a few people who are going to be really tired from chasing it down, so now's the perfect time to attack, and sure enough, off they go. And this is really painful to watch, because I think at this point I'm counting 9 riders going up the road, and then people in the bunch just sitting up and letting them go. Fortunately, this guy in the Norwood kit, just a few riders ahead of me, Ashley Manuel, he steps it up and starts chasing. Now, it looks like there's a few people coming backwards from the front bunch. There are other grades on course, so although I think 1 or 2 people from that front 9 do come back or don't make it all the way across, there's also a few people that we're going past in the corner from other grades. But anyway, Ashley leads us through this bottom corner. We've managed to actually hit this fast for once. He's strung it out nicely. Sean O'Callaghan just ahead of me. He's sitting a bit off the wheel at this point, but I'm happy to let him close that gap. And I reckon at this point they've got maybe a 5 or 6 second gap ahead of us. Totally closable, but they look like they're working pretty well. And then the pace comes out of this chase. Ashley's done a massive turn to get us up to speed and to get us onto the back of this guy. I think the guy who's now on the front, or a couple of wheels up, I think he might have been one of the early chasers to try to get into this. I could see the paces going out, so I decided to get on the front. I'm not doing any massive watts, but I thought I'd try to close this down myself. Now, I was not trying to jump across to this. At this point, I thought people were on my wheel, and I reckon it wasn't until about here when I flicked an elbow and nobody came through that I realised I'm halfway across this gap. No one has come with me, and all I was doing was 400 watts. So at this point, I've got a bit of a choice to make, because there is a strong tailwind down this section, which means that everything that I'm doing, everybody else from that front bunch is having to do as well. So if I do step on it a bit, they're not getting much of a draft. But the other thing is, when I turn around and come into the headwind, if I'm not in this bunch by then, I'm not getting into the group. So I put my head down and work as hard as I can. And the one advantage that I've got on this is that coming into this bottom corner, I know that I can hit this corner a lot quicker than they can. And sure enough, I roll into this corner 20 meters off the back of them and just roll straight up to the group. And I make it on perfectly just as we hit the uphill. I come out of the corner with more speed, and so I get a little bit of a moment just to recuperate. And I was pretty confident that this was going to be the break of the day. It was big enough that it should work. It's a windy day, so breaks usually do. I didn't recognise these 2 girls in blue. They're from the Hong Kong Institute of Sport. I think they're over here for some track racing. But they were pretty strong. They didn't give much of a draft, but there were a few really strong riders in this group. You can see Nick Underwood's ahead of me. I've talked about him before. And this group seems really motivated. What I didn't see was that there were a couple of people who had bridged across after me. This gap is still opening, but there's still people jumping across and coming across in 1s and 2s. And that actually leads to a really interesting dynamic in this race, because this break eventually gets up to about 16 riders, which, if you know anything about riding breakaways, that is way too big to be a functioning breakaway. And if the break gets that big, it'll usually disintegrate, sit up, or people will start attacking out of it. But Nick Underwood does a really good job of marshalling the troops, and he pulls a good turn. He gets the girl in blue to pull a turn. I'm committed to this. I like this sort of bigger breakaway group, so I'm going to pull a turn, and I'm always happy to go into this corner first. So I'm going to work a little bit longer than I might otherwise to make sure I stay on the front and take the corner well. And I won't take you through the whole thing, but believe it or not, absolutely everybody in this breakaway pulls 2 turns. And that was, as it turned out, enough to break the elastic, and the bunch behind sat up. And for the next 3 or 4 laps, this bunch actually worked really well together and kept up a really consistent effort. And I don't think I ever really understood how much of a gap we'd gotten, but we were about 3 laps into this, and I think I glanced back at one point, and I think I mistook the break behind, or the big group behind us, for a different grade. We had just put on so much distance. It ended up being nearly a minute at the end of the race, which on a course that laps at about a minute and a half, that's a pretty big gap. But anyway, we're only 30 minutes into this race. It's 40 minutes plus 2, and so I'm going to keep pulling my turns until I'm absolutely confident this brake's going to stick. And I think a few other people made the call that this brake was going to go all the way ahead of me. And you can see already people are beginning to skip turns. But to be honest, after 2 full rotations of everyone pulling turns, you can see Sean O'Callaghan in the white ahead of me, slotting in behind Frank instead of pulling a turn. With what we've done already, this probably was already in the bag. And this actually put me in a pretty good position, because although I hadn't skipped a turn, I had ended up behind people who weren't pulling through, so I had a few laps where I was not on the front, in which I could recover a bit. A few laps later I made a little bit of a mistake. We've just passed D grade, and you can see Nick Underwood coming past on the right just now. He gets to the front and he hits a big turn, and I hear him yelling out something like, got to keep it moving so they don't catch us. What he was talking about was that D grade was on their last lap, and so all of a sudden we passed them, but now they're sprinting into the finish, and so he gets on the front, and I think it's a pretty decent thing to do. He hits it, burns his match in order to keep this group out of the way of D grade as they're sprinting for the win. And anyway, I didn't realise that that's what he was doing. I thought that the group behind had suddenly got their act together. I hadn't been on the front, so I didn't know how hard we were really going. And I thought at this point that we were about to be caught. And then Nick pulls through, he gets us across the line, he's done what he needs. But then the pace comes out again, and I'm thinking, no, we got to keep this going. We've got 5 minutes left in this race. I do not want to have been in a breakaway. It worked this hard, only for it to fall apart at the last second. And so I go through and pull a turn on the front. Not an all-out effort, but when Elizabeth pulls off after a few seconds here, I do get on the front. And looking back at this, we've got less than 4 laps to go. Now is not the time to be pulling serious turns. And just looking at the power, it's not a... I'm not soft pulling, not soft pedaling, that's for sure. But I do only sit on the front for about longer than I remember. Long enough, I guess. Pulling into this tailwind section always felt really good, because the tailwind's behind you. You go on quickly, it just feels amazing. And I think by this point I'd actually finished warming up. Anyway, I'm seeing cross-eyed. I've got no idea how much time is left in this race. I haven't looked at my clock, and we slow down and bunch up here. And after how fast we'd been going for the last few laps, I was expecting there to be a counter-attack, which I think I said to Alistair. Instead, we got the 2 lap to go banner, and so now I've realised that this is it. There is absolutely no coming back from the group behind, and now it's time to start thinking tactically. And in a situation like this, following Frank in the blue, number 150 ahead, is always a good idea, so I try to get on his wheel. At this point, with 2 laps to go, I'm really confident that I can move up when I want to, so I'm not desperate to be there. But I do want to start moving up, just so that I don't get caught by surprise if someone does go on a surprise 2-lap breakaway. There are a few people still in this group, like Nick Underwood, who genuinely could go on a 2-lap breakaway, and so I don't want to be right at the back when he does launch. And sure enough, 20 seconds later, lap and a half to go, there goes Nick Underwood, attacking into the bottom corner. And to be honest, one guy going off with the group with this much strength in it suits me down to a T, because I can see there's enough guys ahead of me that are going to fill in that gap, so I'm not having to sprint to make up that speed. Olme here in the white decides he wants that wheel and chops me a little bit. Not sure who that is. But anyway, we're back up to speed. I've had to do a little bit of an effort, but I haven't been the one to have to do that chasing. And now we're coming into 1 lap to go. It is strung out just like I like it, and now it's time to get myself into a good position. For some reason or other, it always slows down after the 1 lap to go bell's rung. I don't hit the brakes here. Instead, I put a little bit of an effort in. You can see I'm barely hitting 300 watts, and I move up 5 or 6 places. But more importantly, when we do hit this top corner and people start attacking, I'm already moving a little bit faster, and I've got a lot less effort to do to get back up to speed. Now, there's an element to this that I didn't pick up until I rewatched this a few times. I'm now sitting 5th or 6th wheel, and this with, 800 meters to go is exactly where I like to be. I had a bit of a thought that I'd dive down the left here, but it was sort of too tight to the left and I couldn't get past. But then I see the guy in white, Sean O'Callaghan, and he gets onto Frank's wheel, who pulls out into the wind himself. Now this is perfect because it's a headwind sprint, so I don't want to be first to the corner like I would normally try. I get pinned a little bit in here and I can't quite get through, but I'm coming into the corner in 5th wheel. Frank is pulling a monster effort leading out Sean O'Callaghan, and I didn't realise it was a lead out at this point. I thought everyone at this point was going to be sprinting for the win. Rolton launches in the green, Frank sits up and goes backwards, and I figure this is my time. As soon as I get past the corner, I lay it down. O'Callaghan disappears up the road, and then he stops pedalling. He absolutely sits up, and I reckon he was trying not to win. I'm guessing he doesn't want to go up to A grade. Anyway, I managed to pull past Rolton for second. O'Callaghan gets the win, and I spent the next 20 minutes trying not to throw up. So that ended up being a really fun race. I felt like I surfed the wheels really well at the end there. And that leaves me with a win, a second, a did not finish from a flat, and a second. So we'll see what the handicapper does with that, and hopefully I will still see you in B grade in the next one. Bye for now.